What happens to your brain when you binge watch a TV series? You sit yourself down in front of the TV after a long day at work and decide to start watching that new show everyone's been talking about. Cut to midnight and you've crushed half a season and find yourself tempted to stay up to watch just one more episode, even though you know you'll be paying for it at work the next morning. It happens to the best of us. Thanks to streaming platforms like Netflix and Hulu, we're granted access to several hundred show options that we can watch all in one sitting for a monthly fee that shakes out to less than a week's worth of lattes. What a time to be alive, right? And we're taking full advantage of that access. According to a survey done by the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American spends around 2.7 hours watching TV per day, which adds up to almost 20 hours per week in total. 361,000 people watched all 9 episodes of the second season of Stranger Things on the day it was released. As for the amount of binge watching we're doing, a Netflix survey found that 61% of users regularly watch between 2 to 6 episodes of a show in one sitting. A more recent study found that most Netflix members choose to binge watch their way through a series versus taking their time, finishing an entire season in 1 week. On average, shows that fall in the sci-fi, horror, and thriller categories are the most likely to be binged. Of course, we wouldn't do it if it didn't feel good. In fact, the Netflix survey also found that 73% of participants reported positive feelings associated with binge watching. But if you spent last weekend watching the full season of Stranger Things in its entirety, you may have found yourself feeling exhausted by the end of it, and downright depressed that you're out of episodes to watch. There are a handful of reasons that binge watching gives us such a high, and then leaves us emotionally spent on the couch. Here's a look at what happens to your brain when we settle for a marathon, and how to watch responsibly. When binge watching your favorite show, your brain is continually producing dopamine, and your body experiences a drug-like high. Watching episode after episode of a show feels good, but why is that? When engaged in an activity that's enjoyable, such as binge watching, your brain produces dopamine. This chemical gives the body a natural internal reward of pleasure that reinforces continued engagement in that activity. It is the brain's signal that communicates to the body, "This feels good, you should keep doing this." You experience a pseudo-addiction to the show because you develop cravings for dopamine. The process we experience while binge watching is the same one that occurs when a drug or other type of addiction begins. The neuronal pathways that cause heroin and sex addictions are the same as an addiction to binge watching. Your body does not discriminate against pleasure. It can become addicted to any activity or substance that consistently produces dopamine. Spending so much time immersed in the lives of the characters portrayed on a show is also fueling our binge-watching experience. Our brains code all experiences, be it watched on TV, experienced live, reading a book, or imagined, as real memories. So when watching a TV program, the areas of the brain that are activated are the same as when experiencing a live event. We get drawn into storylines, become attached to characters, and truly care about outcomes of conflicts. There are a handful of different forms of character involvement that contribute to the bond we form with the characters, which ultimately makes us more likely to binge watch a show in its entirety. Identification is when we see a character in a show that we see ourselves in. Also, the identification with power, prestige, and success makes it pleasurable to keep watching. If you have ever found yourself thinking that you and your favorite character would totally be friends in real life, you've experienced this type of involvement. Another type of character involvement is perceived similarity, where we enjoy the experience of "I know what that feels like" because it's affirming and familiar, and may also allow the viewer increased self-esteem when seeing qualities valued in another story. The act of binge watching offers us a temporary escape from our day-to-day grind, which can act as a helpful stress management tool. We are all bombarded with stress from everyday living, and with the nature of today's world, where information floods us constantly, it is hard to shut our minds down and tune out the stress and pressures. A binge can work like a steel door that blocks our brains from thinking about those constant stressors that force themselves into our thoughts. Binge watching can set up a great boundary where troubles are kept at bay. Binge watching can also help foster relationships with others who have been watching the same show as you. It does give you something to talk about with other people. Binge watching can make us feel a part of a community with those that have also watched it, where we can connect over an in-depth discussion of a show. Watching a show that features a character or scenario that ties into your day-to-day routine can also end up having a positive impact in your life. Binge watching can be healthy if your favorite character is also a virtual role model for you, or if the content of the show gives you exposure to a career you're interested in. Although most characters and scenes are exaggerated for a dramatic effect, it can be a good teaching lesson and case study. For example, if a shy person wants to become more assertive, remembering how a strong character on the show behaves can give the shy person a vivid example of how to advocate for herself or try something new. Or, if experiencing a personal crisis, remembering how a favorite character or TV role model solved a problem can give the binge watcher a new, creative, or bolder solutions. Some fans might space each episode out over the course of the ensuing weeks, but many will binge watch, completing the series in a thrilling, draining marathon of being glued to their laptops or TV screens. And when it's all over, what happens then? Many report feeling sad or anxious once a TV binge-watching session has concluded. Are these merely the experiences of a few people who have watched too much TV and could probably use some fresh air? Or could binge-watching actually affect your health and well-being? There's been limited empirical research on the consequences of binge-watching. Watching television is one of the most common leisure time activities in the US and across the world. Yet the way people consume television is rapidly changing, and binge watching has become a relatively recent phenomenon. The rising popularity of on-demand streaming services like Netflix and Hulu have made it easier than ever to watch uninterrupted access to full TV series, and Collins Dictionary even declared binge watch the word of the year for 2015. Marketing and social media campaigns have also encouraged binge watching, with the popular streaming service Netflix calling it the new normal. To date, most of the surveys and research surrounding binge watching have been conducted by private research firms and companies. Excessive TV watching has long been associated with health problems. Scientific studies have shown that prolonged television viewing increases the risk of obesity and related diseases such as diabetes. Another study revealed that binge watching is tied to feelings of loneliness and depression. They also found that those who binge watch lack the self-regulation to stop, suggesting that binge watching may be an addictive behavior. Those who self-identified as binge watchers were more likely to report higher average screen time in the past 7 days compared to those who did not identify as binge watchers. Self-identified binge watchers were also more likely to report higher addiction to TV and were more likely to report higher stress, anxiety, and depression. However, these results could be interpreted with caution. Research shows only a correlation and not a causation. We don't know if depression, stress, and anxiety are caused by binge watching or if it is the other way around. In other words, people might binge watch as a way to temporarily alleviate pre-existing feelings of stress and anxiety. Media influence and social acceptance of binge watching were found to be significant predictors of self-reported binge watching. Of course, more research is needed to understand the true effects of binge watching on physical and mental health. In the interim, the next time you load up The Family Man, Stranger Things, or The Witcher, it might be a good idea to exercise some caution once the show concludes and resist the urge to click next episode. Thank you for watching. Like this video if you liked it. My name is Ai, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!